Well, everybody that's listening in, thank you for being here. We already prayed. Just say amen. Okay. So, my sound tech back there's giving me a hard time again. But, okay, we're at 1 Kings 12. Thank you for being here, everybody listening. Yep, you know the deal. We're going to go ahead and jump in. We've prayed. And 1 Kings 12, start at verse 1. The 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash, that's the word, right? Jehoash became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah, and of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. And Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the dedicated gifts that are brought into the house of the Lord, each man's census money, each man's assessment money, and all the money that a man purposes in his heart to bring into the house of the Lord. Let the priests take it themselves, each from his constituency, and let them repair the damages of the temple wherever any dilapidation is found. So we basically have a decree saying, hey, we need some repairs done. Let's go ahead and give the priests that are over these areas the money so that they could go ahead and start getting things fixed. Sounds good, right? On paper. Sounds real good. But we're talking about people. So let's see how that works out. Now it was so by the 23rd year of King Jehoash that the priests had not repaired the damages of the temple. So King Jehoash called Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and said to them, why have you not repaired the damages of the temple? Now therefore, do not take more money from your constituency, but deliver it for repairing the damages of the temple. And the priests agreed that they would neither receive more money from the people nor repair the damages of the temple. So where'd the money go? I think we know. What is it that is said in Ecclesiastes? There's nothing new under the sun. We still see it today. We see it a whole lot. We see a whole lot of ministries, right? There's a lot of ministries that are out there that, you know, what are they really doing? Number one, avoiding taxes, because it's a ministry. And number two, right, they're just taking all these donations from people, and a lot of it's a lot of hype. I can't tell you, when you hear somebody say they need a second jet or a third jet or something like that, I'm just telling you, it's real. There's real stuff out there. There's really people doing these types of things. It's also, so I told everybody, just for those listening in, you know, our church, nobody's paid, so on and so forth, voluntary, all of it, right? Do we take offerings? Yes, we do. But what do we do with them? We put them back out in the community. And I think it's good for us to take that and look at that. I mean, why do I do that? So God gave me a job that makes money, and he gave me a job that feeds my spirit. Does that make sense? So already by doing what I'm doing, I feel like I'm already paid better than anybody in the world could ever pay me. I don't explain it any better than that, because where did my real happiness come from was when, right, I told everybody Sunday, I started doing things that God was asking of me. So God gave me my peace. That is worth more than you could possibly imagine, right? So, why do I need to get paid? I already get paid. God gave me that job, which pays me. He let me go do some fun things, which pay me. Like, there's things I'm doing outside of church. Why do I need to take the church's money? And Paul even talks about that himself. He says, so as to not be a burden on the church, I did not take any money from you. But he also instructs us at this, like in the same time he's preaching, that, you know, if you should not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain, right? He uses that old phrase that is actually Old Testament writing. What does it mean? Well, you shouldn't not give to those that have dedicated their life to going through Scripture and helping to lead and guide and counsel and things of that nature. So he's like, hey, if somebody's in need, don't tell them they can't eat from the field they're working. So why do I say that? Because is it necessarily a bad thing that people get paid? No. However, I kind of want to do this a whole lot more the way that Paul is, because then why do I do it that way? Nobody can come through that door and say, I do this for financial gain. Everything I do has nothing tied to it. When I preach, it's not tied to my wallet. When I preach, I want to preach what God has for me to preach, no matter whose toes I step on. Sorry, love you guys. I want to be able to say what God has for me to say, and my wallet is not affected by what I say. So if I don't take any money from the church, I feel I could be a more effective preacher for God. Does that make sense? And then nobody can say, oh, you just do this so that, you know, you can pad your wallet. No. No. I don't want to look like one of these guys. Oh, we gave you all this money. Where'd the money go? Well, we didn't exactly do what we said we were going to do with the money. And, yeah, that sounds like work, fixing the temple. So, no thank you, right? I mean, nothing new under the sun, right? Okay. So, let's keep going. So the king says, look, we're not going to let you have that money anymore. Instead, we're going to reroute that money and do what's proper with it. So, then Jehoiada, the priest, took a chest, bore a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar, on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priests who kept the door put there all the money brought into the house of the Lord. So it was, whenever they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up and put it in bags and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. Then they gave the money which had been apportioned into the hands of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they paid it out to the carpenters and builders who worked on the house of the Lord, and to masons and stone cutters, and for buying timber and hewn stone, to repair the damage of the house of the Lord, and for all that was paid out to repair the temple. So they hired some contractors after they were forced to put the money into the temple. So instead of taking and doing some of the work themselves, they were like, where'd the money go? So now we're forcing it in front of everybody. All that money is going to go right here. Right? He's having to force it. Good high priest, by the way. Good leadership right here. Why? Because he put a kibosh on them, you know, basically squandering the money that was meant for God's house. What's that tell you about the attitudes of those high priests? Are they in it unto the Lord? Do they do what they do unto the Lord? No, they're very selfish. So, okay. So they end up, instead of being a blessing on the community and taking care of God's house, what have they become? Selfish and thinking just of self, right? Instead of providing everywhere, everyone a place that is suitable and not falling apart to come in and worship God, what are they doing? I'm just going to pocket that money. Makes you think about some of these roads around here, all I'm saying. Anyway, all right. Let's keep going. Verse 13, however, there were not made for the house of the Lord basins of silver, trimmers, sprinkling bowls, trumpets, any articles of gold or articles of silver from the money brought into the house of the Lord. But they gave that to the workmen, and they repaired the house of the Lord with it. Moreover, they did not acquire an account for the men into whose hand they delivered the money to be paid to workmen. For they dealt faithfully. The money from the trespass offerings and the money from the sin offerings was not brought into the house of the Lord. It belonged to the priests. Okay, so they got what was due to them, and that's it. Okay? But all the other money that was apportioned, right, and they were trying to get them to, hey, here's some extra money, get this stuff done. Nope, they didn't do it. Why? Dad wasn't standing over them, making them do it, so they didn't do it. Instead of going the extra mile for God, we're seeing delusion happen. You got one guy that's trying to make this thing and keep it held together, but what's everybody doing? They don't care. Where's their care? That ain't for me. What am I going to do? I don't live there. This ain't my place. I just work here. So when you start to see these types of attitudes, right, I would say this. Everybody kind of heard Andrew Womack. Heard of him? Maybe you've seen him, heard a little something from him. There's one topic I've seen this man get just almost irate when he preaches it. Okay? He gets upset. But it's people who don't appreciate the job that they have been given. When he preaches on this, he is adamant. He'll hire people to do some work for his ministry or his church. And they'll complain, it's Monday. I hate Mondays. Why do you hate Mondays so much? I got to come to work after having my weekend. And he's like, oh, you don't appreciate what God has given to you. That's why it burns him up so much, right? Is people not appreciating that job is an opportunity God gave them so that they could be provided for, so on and so forth, right? So I'm kind of in the same line with Andrew on this. I don't think I'm as extreme with it, but when people complain about putting food in their mouth, it kind of bothers me just a little bit. Like, why would you complain? It's like, stomp on your own foot because it feels good, right? Like, what are you talking about? So instead of them taking the money, doing some of this themselves so that they could provide more back into it, they couldn't rebuild this back the way it should have been. All the extras, which were ordained and ordered by God to do, they cut those from the budget. So all the silver tray, all the ornaments that were in the house of God, it's supposed to be built this way. It's supposed to be lined with silver or lined with gold. All that stuff that we went through when we were reading about Solomon when he built the temple. It was very ornate. It was like over the top. not so much now. Right? And so it's starting to fall apart. What happened to all that silver? What happened to all that gold? What happened to all that stuff? It's falling apart. It's rusting. It's been some time. Now, maybe the gold isn't as polished. Maybe the copper's turning green or something like that. But they're in it for themselves, and there's not a lot of care. With whatever God gives you, right? You should care about it. If he put it in your path, you should care about it. Why? He put it in your path for a reason. So, whatever you do, do it unto the Lord. Okay. Yep. Verse 17. Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it. Then Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Joash, king of Judah, took all the sacred things that his father, Jehoshaphat, and Joram and Ahaziah, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own sacred things, and all the gold found in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and in the king's house, and sent them to Hazael, king of Syria. Then he went away from Jerusalem. All the things that God said, you're going to have this, that, and the other. Oh, don't hurt us. We'll give you everything. He's a bit of a coward. Pays him off and runs. Runs away. Basically, took all of God's things and gave it away. All the things that God had given him, he gave it away. All the things of importance, right? Material things, okay. But for them and their understanding and the way that, their culture was in that time, everything was very, physical with God, if you will, right? There's a spiritual understanding that was there, but it wasn't exactly, everything came back to physical presence of God, right? Okay. Now verse 19, now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And his servants arose and formed a conspiracy and killed Joash in the house of the Millo, which goes down to Silla. For Josachar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, servants, struck him. So he died, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. Then Amaziah, his son, reigned in his place. Took the stuff, gave all the stuff away, ran. This is what I'm kind of having to read between the lines here. And they went and they found him for what he had done to the house of the Lord, and they killed him for it. Doesn't make him right. I don't think so. However, obviously, there are those that are in Jerusalem that don't agree with the leadership and the way that things were going. You don't do God like that, is the idea behind, I think, what they did. It doesn't say it outright and directly, but that's, going from, hey, he did all these things, to his servants killed him. His servants. Okay? They were obviously upset. But I think the key takeaway in all of this, right? There's a lot of selfishness that is starting to come out of the leadership in Jerusalem. They're in everything for themselves. Selfish leadership is a cancer. Okay? If there is somebody that only thinks about themselves, you got to question. Should I be following this leadership? Now, the most important leader that you should go to in all of this is God. You should ask him, is this who you would have me follow? If he says keep going, keep going. If he says cut bait, and run? Okay, let's get out of here. That is all I have this evening, if you will, Steve.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this message you had for us tonight. We thank you for teaching us, loving us,